All right, hey guys, it's Miss Kessling. I just wanted to post our first virtual lesson via Google Classroom. So this is my first time using this program, so bear with me. I've never really done a screen capturing program before, but I just wanted to take a couple minutes. So the last few days we've been working on the different types of organelles that can be found in cells. So back when we talked about our prokaryotic versus eukaryotic cells, we learned that all cells have 5 things in common. We got small size, cell membrane, cytoplasm, and one of them was also organelles. So we know that all cells have organelles. Now, the types of organelles that they have, that can be different. So we're going to spend time this week and last week talking about the 2 types of eukaryotic cells, which are plant and animal, which obviously plants are made up of plant cells as well as like algae, and people and animals are made up of animal cells. So the organelles that they have inside of them are similar. A lot of them have the same organelles, but a lot of them have different types of organelles too. So there are some that plants have that animals don't, and some that animals have that plants don't. So you've probably already kind of figured that out with the work that we've been doing the last couple days, but I wanted to just do a tutorial and go over those for you because coming up in a couple of days, probably tomorrow or the next day, you're going to have a labeling activity where you're going to label the types of cells, types of organelles, this will help you with that. And also we're going to do a quiz where I'm going to quiz you on this information. Obviously, you're at home, so feel free to use this program to help you answer those quiz questions if need be. Obviously, I'd like you to try to do it without needing to go back and look, but if you struggle, then you can go ahead and go back and look at those. So with this lesson, we're going to talk about what the organelle looks like, what they do for the cell, and where they can be found in the cell. So let's start out with one we've already talked about. So the cell membrane. The cell membrane is semi-permeable. So that means that like these little holes here, stuff can go in and out of them. Now, the cell will let certain things in and certain things out, which we've talked about that. So the cell membrane goes all the way around the cell. So it's kind of like the skin of your body. Your body's kind of like a cell membrane. Obviously, though, it's not a cell membrane. It is a membrane covering, though. So it does allow certain things in and out. So we know the cell membrane keeps the cytoplasm inside. It allows some things in and out. So what would be some things that would go in, for example? We talked about that a chapter or 2 ago. Cell membrane would allow in water, nutrients, vitamins, medicine, things like that. Whereas what it would want to keep out, it obviously would want to keep out infection, disease, bacteria, things that are obviously bad for you and the cell. It also protects the content. So just like your skin protects what's inside of your body, the cell membrane protects the inside of the cell. It's kind of like the security guard. So hence why we have a picture of the security guard here. It's like the security of the bouncer of the cell. It's only going to allow certain things in and keep other things out. So that's why we refer to it as that. You might hear me with a lot of these organelles, you'll hear me compare them to real life things. Not all of them, but a lot of them you can kind of have something it's similar to in real life. And then, like I said, these are found in both plant and animal cells. Okay, moving on, we have the cytoplasm. So we've talked about the cytoplasm. This is another one of those things that all cells have in common. It's all that jelly-like material that's just floating around. So if you look at all this light purple colored stuff, that's the cytoplasm. Last time we talked about the cytoplasm, we referred to it as like a jello mold. So it keeps everything in place. So if all of these pieces of fruit are different organelles, they're stuck in place. Most organelles are found in the same location every time. The nucleus is always towards the center. The Golgi body is always near the cell membrane. So it keeps everything stuck in place. And it also protects them so that if a cell, gets bumped into inside of the body or something, it's not, the organelles aren't bouncing off of one another. And again, these are found in all cells. So these 2 have been reviewed. We talked about these last time, the last chapter when we talked about prokaryotic versus eukaryotic cells. So some new ones would be like the cell wall. So the cell wall are found only in plants. So this is one of those ones that is only found in plant cells. And these guys basically just give extra support. So I did like a brick wall here. So they give extra support to the cell membrane to keep the cell strong. So it provides support so that, let's say, like plants need a lot of water. So if a plant gets overwatered, which if you've ever watered your parents' plants, you might have done in the past. I've definitely overwatered some plants. And this cell wall helps those plant cells from blowing up and expanding too much because of too much water. So that's what the cell wall is for. It does contain a fiber called cellulose. That's like a really strong fiber. It kind of looks like straw, and it's what builds that, gives that cell wall the strength so that it gives that extra support. This is a picture of what a cell wall looks like underneath a microscope. So cell walls only in plants, and again, they just give that extra support for plants. Okay. All right. Moving on, we got the nucleus. So this is the largest and most visible organelle. So if you were to look at a cell underneath a microscope, almost 100% of the time, the nucleus is going to be the one organelle you can see with a standard microscope. Now, if you go and use a more powerful microscope, like an electron microscope, you can actually go in and see more details in the cell, like the mitochondria and things like that. But even with the standard light microscope, like what we use in class, you can see the nucleus because it's so big. It's real obvious for you to see. It's the control center. So that's why I have a picture of a brain here. Basically, if you were to compare a cell to the human body, the nucleus is the brain. It controls everything. Just like your brain is telling you to breathe and your heart to beat and everything right now, that's what the nucleus does for the cell. It does contain the DNA. So if you look at in here, all these little squiggly little things inside the nucleus, that is the DNA or the chromatin. So it does store that. It also stores the nucleolus. So inside the nucleus, there's going to be a dark like circle inside of there, a dark ball almost. That's the nucleolus, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, when you look at that under the microscope, you cannot see the nucleolus typically with a standard microscope. And again, they're in both cells, both plant and animal cells. Now, remember, they're not in prokaryotic, but they are in both eukaryotic, plant, and animal. So that's the nucleus. All right, and I believe nucleolus is next. Let's see. Yep. So nucleolus is next. So this is the one that's found inside the nucleus. It's that ball inside the nucleus. And basically it makes the ribosome. So ribosomes are going to be used in other places throughout the cell. This is where they originate. So kind of like with your bone marrow makes your red blood cells, the nucleolus makes ribosomes, which are going to be used in other parts of the cell in a little bit. You'll see that. And nucleolus is found in both plant and animal cells. Okay, so that's a pretty simple one. It just makes ribosomes that are going to be used later on. Okay, and then ribosomes. These are the smallest and most abundant, so they're really tiny. You got these little black dots basically are the ribosomes in a cell. They're found in two places. They're found floating around the cells, so you'll see them all throughout the cytoplasm. And then they're also found stuck on another organelle we'll talk about, which is the rough ER, which is why they call the rough ER rough, because it's covered in ribosomes. There's also a smooth ER, which is called smooth because it does not have ribosomes. So if you think about like the ribosomes as rocks in a road, it makes the road rougher. And the ribosomes make proteins. So proteins is a nutrient that cells and humans need in order to survive, and that's what the ribosomes do. And again, they're found in both plant and animal cells. So they're abundant, meaning there's lots of them. There's probably more ribosomes than any other organelle in the cell. There's lots of them floating around and hanging out on that rough ER. So again, they make the proteins. All right, moving on. All right, so here we go, the rough and smooth ER. So ERs do two things. There are three things. They make lipids, which is a fat. So there are good fats that our body needs and all organisms need to survive. They break down drugs and other chemicals. So let's say the cell is taking in a medication. The ERs help break down those drugs and chemicals so that they can be used throughout the body. And then they're also like an internal delivery system. So if you think about this ER like as almost like train tracks, carry things throughout the cell using these train tracks. So that's why I have a picture of like the L here. Kind of like the L downtown where you can hop on these different lines, the red line, green line, and go different places. That's what the ERs do. They carry these things throughout the cell. And like I said, rough is rough because it's covered in ribosomes, whereas smooth is not. So that's why they call it the smooth ER. And again, they're both found in both plants and animals. If you kind of caught on so far, most of these organelles are found in both. There's very few that are in one or the other. So hopefully you're keeping track of those because that will be a question you're asked down the road. Like I said, probably tomorrow or the next day. All right, so delivery systems. Next up, we got the Golgi Body. Now, the Golgi Body is called the Golgi Body sometimes. You might see it called the Golgi Apparatus. You might see it called the Golgi Complex. But basically, the word Golgi, this part's always going to be the same. So we got the Golgi. This is the packaging center. So basically, it gets everything ready to ship out. So I kind of refer to it as like the prime or the FedEx of the cell because they get everything, they package all the materials, the proteins and other items, the lipids, and they get them ready and they package them up in boxes, which the boxes are called vesicles. These little ball things are called vesicles, and they allow it to leave the cell. So when your body needs proteins and other nutrients, the Golgi Body gets them all ready and then ships them out via their vesicles, which is why I call it kind of like the Prime or the FedEx. If you're anything like me, you've been really using Amazon Prime, so I kind of think about this one a lot with Golgi. It gets everything ready to ship out. And again, these can be found in both plant and animal cells. So this is another one of those organelles that's found in both. All right. And mitochondria, these are also, sometimes called the mighty mitochondria because they are the powerhouse. These guys are the ones that make the energy. So I have a picture here of a power plant because these are basically the power plants of the cell. Without the mitochondria, the cell wouldn't have the energy they need in order to function. Everything needs energy. You guys know when you don't have energy, you're kind of lethargic and tired, and you know, when the sun's not shining, you feel like just laying around. It's kind of the same with the cell. The cell needs energy, and the mitochondria are what make that energy. So what they do is they break down food molecules and turn them into ATP. ATP is just a fancy way of saying energy. So the energy then is used to power the rest of the cell. So if we didn't have energy, the nucleus wouldn't function. The ERs wouldn't be able to ship out their materials or transfer their materials. The Golgi wouldn't be able to package their stuff to send out to the cell. So these are the power plants. And again, as you can see, they're found in both plant and animals. So both of these need energy, and so they both require mitochondria. So the mighty mitochondria, the powerhouse. Chloroplast. Now here we go. Here's one that's not found in both. These are in plant cells only. A big way to figure that out is to remember that chloroplasts contain chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is a green pigment, so it makes the cell green. This is what makes plants green. And this is the biggest thing needed for photosynthesis. What they do is these are usually found in the leaves and the stem of the plants, and they trap sunlight. Sunlight is needed in order for plants to go through photosynthesis, and so what they do is they trap the sunlight, then the plant uses that sunlight in order to make glucose and the food. So I refer to these as like the solar panels of the cell. They suck up the energy from the sun, and then they use it to power the cell and make glucose through photosynthesis. So this is one of those ones that's only in a plant cell. Animal cells do not have chloroplasts. Vacuoles. Now, both cells have vacuoles. However, they're a little bit different. In a plant cell has one large vacuole. So this is a picture right here of a plant cell. You have one big vacuole right here. Whereas animal cells have many small vacuoles. So if this was an animal cell, you wouldn't see one big central vacuole. You'd see several small vacuoles around the cell. And what these guys do is basically they store water and other liquids. So they're kind of like a water tower. They just store water for the cells. Now, that's why a plant cell has to have one large vacuole, because plants take in more water than animal cells typically. So that's why they have one big one in each of the